beautiful loves. It is Tuesday. Actually, technically it's Monday night. But I'm getting Tuesday's video ready a little early because I have to be on a webinar tomorrow morning. And so I wanted to make sure I got my video up since it was late today. The bigger my videos are, the longer they take to upload. So I'm going to try to make them and upload them the day before. Anyways, so we're going to go ahead and read the next 3 chapters of our Magic Treehouse book. And then we'll kind of go from there with it. So yesterday we started on our first Merlin mission, and Jack and Annie were going to Camelot, and they ended up going to Camelot, and they met up with Morgan, and she told them that Camelot was in trouble again, that after they had helped King Arthur the last time, that a dark wizard had cast a spell over the kingdom and had kind of stopped all happiness and all joy. And so King Arthur sent a couple of his knights on a mission to the other world, which is basically the realm of magic. And they were supposed to bring back a solution. And when they didn't return, King Arthur blamed magic for all the problems that had gone on in the kingdom, and he outlawed magic. So he said that no more magic could be performed, which means the treehouse was not going to be able to work anymore. So Jack and Annie, of course, are pretty upset about it. But they're given the option to stay and at least finish celebrating Christmas with them, and then they're going to have to go back home. And as they begin their celebration, the doors swing open, and in rides a knight, all dressed in red, and Annie calls him a Christmas knight, and that was where we had left off. So we're going to read our next 3 chapters today because I told you this is a 16-chapter book. So my goal is to read 3 a day until Friday. We'll read the 4, and then we should be able to end up and take an AR test. And these Merlin missions, by the way, are more than 1 point apiece. So the other Magic Treehouse books were all worth about 1 point. These are like usually 2 to 3. So we're going to do vocabulary, and then we're going to get into it. So vocabulary, I say, you say. Cauldron. Cauldron is that big pot that's usually used for cooking over an open fire. We think of them as being associated with witches. Cloak, which is basically a sleeveless kind of jacket that you wear that you usually tie around your neck. Fate is something that's meant to happen, something that's meant to be. Fury. Fury means full of anger, full of just rage. Legend, which you guys should already know, which is a really old made-up story, usually has some kind of magical element to it. Quest, which is basically a really long journey or search for something. And then a thicket, which is basically a group of trees that are all together. So let's go ahead and get started. So we were on chapter 4, Who Will Go? I have come to see Arthur the King, said the Christmas knight. His deep voice echoed from inside his helmet. His red armor gleamed in the firelight. King Arthur stood up. He stared fiercely at the knight, but he spoke in a calm, steady voice. I am Arthur the King, he said. Who are you? The knight did not answer Arthur's question. So, you are the legendary King Arthur of Camelot, he said in a mocking voice. And these must be the famous Knights of the Round Table. Yes, said King Arthur, and again I ask, who are you? The Christmas knight still did not answer the question. The spell of the dark wizard has robbed Camelot of its joy, said the Christmas knight. Has it robbed you and your men of your courage as well? You dare question our courage? King Arthur said in a low, angry voice. So that's the Christmas knight over here, and then that's King Arthur and Queen Guinevere and Morgan. I don't think actually Guinevere wasn't in that picture. Camelot is dying, the Christmas knight boomed. Why has no one journeyed to the other world to recapture its joy? I have sent my best knights on such a quest, said King Arthur. They never returned. Then send more, thundered the Christmas knight. No, shouted King Arthur, pounding his fist on the table. Never again will I feed good men to magic and monsters. Jack felt a chill of fear. What monsters? Then choose your fate, said the Christmas knight. If you will send no one else to the other world, all that your kingdom has gained through time, all beauty, all music, all wonder, all light, all that Camelot has ever been or ever could be, will be lost and forgotten forever. No, shouted Annie. Shh, Annie, said Jack. The Christmas knight turned to the knights at the table. Who will go? He boomed. We will, shouted Annie. We will, said Jack. Yes, we'll go on the quest, Annie yelled. She jumped up. No, cried Morgan Le Fay. Never, said King Arthur. Annie, said Jack. He leapt up from his chair and tried to grab her. "Yes," thundered the Christmas Knight. He pointed his red-gloved hand at Jack and Annie. "The youngest of all, these two. They will go." "You're mocking us!" King Arthur shouted. "They will go!" boomed the knight. His words echoed through the hall. "Oh no," thought Jack. "Yes," said Annie. She pulled Jack closer to the Christmas Knight. King Arthur turned to his men. "Stop them!" Several knights started to rush towards Jack and Annie. The Christmas Knight raised his gloved hand high in the air. In an instant, the room fell deathly silent. Everyone around the table was still as statues. King Arthur looked like the statue of a furious king. Queen Guinevere looked like the statue of a worried queen. The Knights of the Round Table looked like the statues of fierce knights. And Morgan Le Fay looked like the statue of a caring friend. Her mouth was open as if she was calling out to Jack and Annie, but no sound came from her lips. No sound at all. Chapter 5. Rhymes of the Christmas Night. "Morgan?" said Annie. Annie ran to the table. She touched Morgan's cheek and then quickly pulled her hand back. "She's cold. She's cold as ice," said Annie, and tears filled her eyes. Annie turned to the Christmas Knight in fury. "What did you do to Morgan?" she asked. "Bring her back!" "Do not fear," said the Christmas Knight, and his voice was softer and kinder now. "She will come back to life after you've completed your quest." "What exactly is our quest?" said Jack. "You must journey to the other world," said the Christmas Knight. "There you will find a cauldron. The cauldron is filled with the water of memory and imagination. You must bring a cup of water back to Camelot. If you fail, Camelot will never come back to life. Never." "How do we do all that?" said Annie, wiping her eyes. "Remember these 3 rhymes," said the Christmas Knight. Wait, let me write it down," said Jack. His hands trembled as he pulled out his notebook and pencil. He looked at the Christmas Knight. "Okay, I'm ready," he said. Gripping his pencil made Jack feel strong. The knight's voice rang out from inside his helmet. "Beyond the iron gate, the keepers of the cauldron wait." Jack quickly wrote down the knight's words. "Okay, what's next?" he asked. The Christmas Knight went on. "4 gifts you will need, the first from me, then a cup, a compass, and finally a key." "Cup, compass, key. Got it," said Jack. The Christmas Knight's voice boomed again. "If you survive to complete your quest, the secret door lies to the west." Jack copied down the last rhyme and looked up. "Anything else?" he asked. Without a word, the knight pulled off his red cloak. He dropped it to the floor, and it fell silently in a heap at Jack and Annie's feet. The Christmas Knight snapped the horse's red reins, and then galloped out of the hall. Chapter 6. A White Comet. Once the night had gone, the candles and torches in the great hall grew dimmer. A bitter chill crept over the room. "What do these 3 rhymes mean?" said Jack. "Who are the keepers of the cauldron, and what's the secret door?" "Dunno," said Annie. "I just know we have to save Morgan." She gathered up the red cloak in her arms. "We've got our first gift," she said. "Let's go." "Wait," said Jack. "We should figure this out first." "No," said Annie. "We should just go." And she turned and headed for the archway. Jack pushed his glasses into place and looked back at the round table, at the frozen king and queen, at the frozen knights, and at Morgan Le Fay. He loved Morgan. She was their great friend and teacher. If he and Annie did not go on their quest, Morgan's story and the stories of the Camelot and all stories about the magic treehouse would be ended forever. He took a deep breath, put his notebook into his backpack, and turned towards the archway. "Annie?" he asked. But she was gone. "Annie, wait!" he shouted. "Wait!" Jack ran out of the hall. "Annie!" "I'm here," she said. "I'm waiting." She was standing at the end of the entrance, peering outside. "How do we get to the other world?" she asked. "Maybe the treehouse can take us there," said Jack. "Come on." Together they hurried out of the inner courtyard of the castle and over the drawbridge. They ran over the frozen ground to the moonlit grove of trees. Clutching the red cloak, Annie started up the rope ladder. I think grove was an old one of ours. Jack followed. They climbed inside the treehouse and sat on the floor. Annie picked up the royal invitation. "Close your eyes," she said. "I'll make a wish." Jack closed his eyes. He was already shivering from the cold. "I wish we could go to the other world," said Annie. The bare branches of the trees rattled in the wind. "I think it's working," said Annie. The wind stopped blowing. Jack opened his eyes. When they looked out the window, the dark castle loomed against the sky. They were still at Camelot. "It didn't work," said Jack, his teeth chattering. "Yeah, it did," said Annie. "Look down." Standing below the treehouse was the biggest deer Jack had ever seen. The deer was staring up at them with amber eyes. His huge antlers seemed to glow in the cold moonlight. Most amazing, the deer was completely white as new-fallen snow. "A white stag," said Jack. Puffs of frosty air blew through the stag's nostrils. He stepped towards the tree and shook his giant head. "He's come to take us on our journey," said Annie. People don't ride deer, said Jack. But Annie had already started down the rope ladder. Jack watched from the window as she walked to the stag and spoke softly. The stag knelt. Annie climbed onto his back. Come on, she called to Jack. Bring the cloak. Okay, said Jack. He gathered up the heavy velvet cloak. Clutching it against his chest, he climbed down the rope ladder and hurried over to Annie and the white stag. Put on the cloak and climb up behind me, said Annie. Jack put on the cloak over his backpack. He pulled it around his shoulders and buttoned it at the neck. As the cloak fell down around his body, the soft, smooth cloth made him feel warm and safe. Ready, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. He climbed onto the stag's back. The white stag slowly stood up. Annie leaned forward, putting her arms around its neck. Jack leaned forward too and held on to Annie. Can y'all see that? Sorry. Oh, okay, there you go. Remind me to tell you when I'm done reading this a fact about, specifically about deer, but also about white deer. The red velvet cloak draped over both of them, falling past their feet. The white stag stepped gracefully over the frozen grass. He walked out through the outer gate of the castle. He blew a puff of air, then broke into a leaping run. Jack held on tightly to Annie as the stag dashed across the frost-covered field. He jumped over hedgerows. Hedgerows are like low rows of bushes. They have them a lot in like Great Britain. And stone walls. He bounded across icy streams. Bound. Annie's braids floated on the wind. The red cloak billowed behind them. Jack was amazed at how easy it was to ride on the stag's back. He felt calm and safe as the stag sped like a white comet through the wintry countryside. The stag ran past flocks of sheep and herds of goats asleep in the meadow. He ran past thatched huts and quiet stables. The stag ran on and on through the starry night. Jack could see cloud-covered mountain ranges in the distance. When they came close to the craggy mountains, Jack was sure the stag would stop, but he galloped on, not even breaking his stride as he came up the rocky slope. The stag finally came to a halt at the ledge of a steep cliff. In a windy swirl of fog and cloud, he knelt to the ground, and they slid off his back. The stag stood up and stared down at them with his glowing amber eyes. Thank you, said Annie. Do you have to leave now? The stag lowered his head and then raised it again. He blew out a puff of frosty air, then leapt away, vanishing into the mist. Bye, Annie said wistfully. She stared into the mist for a moment and then turned to Jack. What do we do now? Dunno, said Jack. Let's read the 3 rhymes again. He reached under the red cloak and pulled off his pack. He pulled out his notebook and started to read. Beyond the iron gate. Jack, look! Annie interrupted. Jack looked up. The wind had blown away some of the fog. Beyond the cliff rose another mountain. A huge gate was built into its side. A pale light shone between the gate's thick iron bars. 2 knights in gold armor stood guard under flaming torches. Oh man, whispered Jack. That's it. It's the iron gate, said Annie. If we pass through that gate, we'll be in the other world. Chapter 7. A Good Trick. And that's where we're going to stop for today. So I said I was going to mention something about white stags. So a white stag, or specifically a stag, especially over in Europe, can sometimes be known as a hart. Not spelled like your heartbeat, but hart spelled H-A-R-T is another word for deer. And a lot of legends say that if you capture or shoot a white deer, that it will give you a special quest or journey. And sometimes they're called the questing beasts. Sometimes they're white, sometimes they're golden, but there are legends of the questing beast or the hart. I will try to find an article for you that I can put up, or maybe like a little summary of it. But it's actually, it goes back in many different traditions. So, yeah. All right. Very quickly, we'll do math. And then, all right. Okay, very quickly, time to do math. Oh, I didn't turn my camera. Okay. Okay, so yesterday's problem was that there are 2 fewer girls than boys. There are 6 girls. How many boys are there? So if there are 2 fewer girls, that means there's more boys than girls. So 2 fewer would be, we know that there's 6 girls. There's 2 fewer than boys. So 6 plus 2 would give us the amount of boys there is. Or we would do the amount of boys minus 2 gives us 6. And so our answer should be 8. Okay, today's is there are 3 fewer tomatoes than watermelons growing in the garden. There are 8 watermelons. How many tomatoes are there?
All right, solve it, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye, guys.